The woman's body hit the wooden planks of his porch with a dull thud that made Xander Quinlan drop the bridle he had been mending and rush to the door of his small ranch house, his heart hammering against his ribs as he pulled open the door to find her lying there in a crumpled heap, her dark hair matted with dust and sweat, her traveling dress torn at the hem and stained with the evidence of miles walked under the merciless Nevada sun. It was July of 1882, and the heat had been brutal for weeks, the kind that made even the lizards seek shade, and this woman looked like she had been walking through it for days without water or rest. Xander knelt beside her, his calloused hands gentle as he turned her over, checking for breath and finding it shallow but steady. Her face was sunburned, lips cracked and bleeding, and when he lifted her carefully in his arms, he was shocked at how light she felt, as if she had not eaten properly in a very long time. He carried her inside his modest home, laying her on his own bed since it was the only one he had, and immediately set about trying to help her. He had seen people in bad shape before during his years working cattle drives and living out here alone, but something about this woman stirred a protective instinct in him that he had not felt in a long time. Xander fetched cool water from his well, dampening a cloth and pressing it to her forehead, then carefully dripping small amounts of water onto her parched lips. She did not wake, but her body seemed to accept the moisture desperately. As the afternoon wore into evening, Xander worked steadily to care for his unexpected guest. He knew that giving someone in her condition too much water too fast could be dangerous, so he was patient, offering just drops at a time. He also set about making a simple broth, something that would be easy on her stomach when she woke. If she woke, he pushed that dark thought away and focused on the task at hand, cutting vegetables from his small garden and adding them to a pot with some salt pork and water, letting it simmer slowly on his stove. The sun set over the desert landscape surrounding his property, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that bled into purple, and still the woman slept. Xander pulled a chair close to the bed and settled in, watching her face for any sign of change. He had no idea who she was or what had brought her to his door, but he would not leave her alone in this condition. His ranch was a good 15 miles from Las Vegas, Nevada, the nearest town, and he wondered how far she had walked to reach him. As the hours passed and night fell completely, Xander found himself studying her face in the lamplight. Even sunburned and exhausted, she was beautiful, with fine features and long dark lashes that rested against her cheeks. He guessed she was around his own age, perhaps 25 or 26, though it was hard to tell with the toll the desert had taken on her. Her hands, when he examined them, were blistered and raw, confirming his suspicion that she had walked a great distance. The night stretched long and quiet, broken only by the occasional coyote howl in the distance and the soft sounds of the woman's breathing. Xander checked on her regularly, continuing to give her small amounts of water, and around midnight he noticed her starting to stir slightly, small movements that suggested she might be climbing toward consciousness. He leaned forward in his chair, watching carefully. It was not until the first light of dawn began to creep through his window that her eyes finally opened. They were green, he noticed immediately, a striking green that reminded him of the rare grass that grew near springs in the desert. She blinked slowly, confusion evident in her gaze as she tried to focus on her surroundings and on him. "Easy now," Xander said softly, keeping his voice low and calm. "You are safe. You collapsed at my door yesterday afternoon. I have been trying to get some water in you." She tried to speak, but only a rasping sound came out. Xander quickly brought a cup of water to her lips, supporting her head as she drank. "Slow," he cautioned. "Just small sips." After she had drunk a little, she tried again. "Where am I?" "My ranch, about 15 miles outside of Las Vegas." "I am Xander Quinlan. What is your name?" "Margot," she whispered, her voice still rough. "Margot Ellis. Well, Miss Ellis, you gave me quite a scare. How long were you walking out there?" Margot closed her eyes, and he saw tears leak from the corners. 3 days, I think. Maybe 4. I lost track." 3 days? Xander could not hide his shock. "In this heat?" How are you even alive? I had some water at first, she said, opening her eyes again. But I ran out, and I just kept walking because I did not know what else to do. Where were you coming from? Where were you trying to go? Margot's face crumpled, and she turned her head away. I was trying to get away. From my husband. My former husband. I should say. Xander felt a flash of anger on her behalf. Did he hurt you? Not in the way you mean, she said quietly. He never hit me, but he was cruel in other ways, and he gambled away everything we had, including the money my parents left me when they died. When I confronted him about it, he told me I could leave if I did not like it, that he did not care. So I did. I took what little I could carry, and I left. From Las Vegas? She nodded. We had been living there for 6 months. Before that, we were in San Francisco, but we had to leave because of his debts. I thought Nevada might be a fresh start, but it was more of the same. Worse, actually. Xander sat back in his chair, processing this information. You walked out into the desert alone? I know it was foolish, Margot said, fresh tears streaming down her face. I just was not thinking clearly. I was so angry and hurt, and I just started walking. By the time I realized how stupid it was, I was already lost. I tried to find my way back, but everything looked the same in every direction. The desert is unforgiving that way, Xander said gently. But you found your way here, and that is what matters. You are safe now. Why did you help me? Margot asked, turning to look at him directly. You do not know me. Because you needed help, Xander said simply. I could not very well leave you on my porch. Some men would have. I am not some men. He stood up and went to check on the soup that had been simmering all night, now rich and fragrant. I made some broth. Do you think you could eat something? Margot nodded slowly, and Xander ladled some of the soup into a bowl, bringing it back to her. He helped her sit up against his pillows, noting how she winced at the movement, and then handed her the bowl and a spoon. Slowly, he cautioned again. Your stomach has been empty for a while. She took a tentative sip, and he saw the relief and pleasure cross her face as the warm broth went down. This is good, she said, her voice already sounding a bit stronger. Thank you. You are welcome. Xander returned to his chair, watching to make sure she did not eat too quickly. When you are feeling stronger, we can figure out what to do next. But for now, you just need to rest and recover. I cannot impose on you, Margot protested weakly. You are not imposing. I have the room, and it has been a while since I had company. This was an understatement. Xander had been living alone on his ranch for 3 years, ever since he had saved up enough from his cattle driving days to buy the land and start building a life for himself. It was a solitary existence, but he had told himself he preferred it that way after his own disappointments in love. Margot finished about half the bowl before setting it aside, looking exhausted from even that small effort. I am so tired, she murmured. Then sleep, Xander said. I will be here if you need anything. She looked at him with those green eyes, and he saw gratitude and something else he could not quite name. You stayed awake all night, did you not? Watching over me? Xander felt his face warm. I wanted to make sure you were all right. Thank you, she whispered, and then her eyes drifted closed again. Over the next few days, Xander tended to Margot with a care that surprised even himself. He continued to sleep in his chair, refusing to take his bed back while she was recovering, despite her protests. He made sure she ate regularly, gradually increasing the portions as her stomach adjusted. He treated her sunburn with a salve he made from aloe plants that grew near his well, and he bandaged her blistered feet. As Margot grew stronger, they talked more. She told him about her life before Nevada, about growing up in Philadelphia as the daughter of a successful merchant, about meeting her husband at a social function and being swept off her feet by his charm and promises. She told him how slowly she had realized that the charm was only surface deep, that underneath he was selfish and careless, and always chasing the next big win that never came. Xander found himself telling her things he had not spoken about in years, about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 17, about working his way west, doing any job he could find, about the woman he had been engaged to marry when he was 22, who had left him for a banker with better prospects, about deciding to strike out on his own and build something that was entirely his. "Do you get lonely out here?" Margot asked one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset. She was wearing one of his shirts since her dress had been ruined, and he had given her a pair of his smaller trousers that she had to roll up several times. Her hair was clean now, falling in dark waves around her shoulders, and the sunburn was fading to reveal creamy skin underneath. "Sometimes," Xander admitted, "but I also like the peace. No one telling me what to do or expecting things from me that I cannot give." "I understand that," Margot said softly, "though I think I have had enough of being alone after those days in the desert. I never want to feel that isolated again." "You do not have to," Xander said, then wondered if he had been too forward. "I mean, you are welcome to stay here as long as you need to recover and figure out what you want to do next." Margot looked at him, and he saw something warm in her expression. "You are very kind, Xander. I do not think I have ever met anyone quite like you." "I am just a cowboy trying to make a living," he said, feeling self-conscious. "No," she said firmly. "You are more than that. You are a good man, I can tell." By the end of the first week, Margot was well enough to move around on her own, and she insisted on helping Xander with the work around the ranch. He tried to protest, saying she should continue resting, but she was determined. "I need to do something," she said. "I cannot just sit around being waited on. It is making me feel useless." So Xander let her help with the cooking and cleaning, and he showed her how to feed the chickens he kept and collect their eggs. He had a small herd of cattle that grazed on his land, and though he did not let her help with the heavier work of tending them, she would often ride out with him when he checked on them, sitting behind him on his horse with her arms around his waist. Those rides became something they both looked forward to. There was something peaceful about moving across the desert landscape together, the morning air still cool before the heat of the day set in. Margot would rest her cheek against his back, and Xander found himself acutely aware of her presence, of the way she fit against him so naturally. He was falling for her, he realized one morning, as he watched her laugh at one of the chickens that was being particularly dramatic about receiving its feed. He had tried to tell himself it was just the circumstances, that he was lonely and she was vulnerable, and it was natural to form a connection under these conditions. But he knew it was more than that. There was something about Margot that drew him in, something beyond her beauty. She was smart and funny, even after everything she had been through. She was curious about the world and asked him thoughtful questions about his life and work. She was kind, always thanking him for even small things, always noticing when he was tired or troubled. The problem was that he had no idea if she felt the same way. She was affectionate toward him, certainly, and seemed to enjoy his company. But was that love or just gratitude? And even if she did have feelings for him, was she ready for something new after escaping her marriage? 2 weeks after Margot had collapsed at his door, Xander rode into Las Vegas to pick up supplies. He had been putting it off, reluctant to leave Margot alone, even though she was perfectly capable of taking care of herself now. But they needed flour and sugar and various other items that he could not produce on the ranch. "I will be fine," Margot assured him when he expressed his concerns. "I promise not to let the chickens stage a revolt while you are gone." He smiled at her joke, but still felt uneasy as he rode away. Las Vegas was a rough town, full of miners and gamblers and men looking to make a quick fortune. Xander did his business as quickly as he could at the general store, loading his saddlebags with supplies and preparing to head back. "Xander Quinlan, is that you?" He turned to see Tom Morrison, a man who ran one of the saloons in town. Xander knew him slightly, enough to exchange greetings when their paths crossed. Tom, he acknowledged with a nod. Have not seen you in town for a while, Tom said, coming closer. Say, have you seen a woman out your way? Dark hair, pretty, probably looking lost. Xander felt his body tense. Why do you ask? Fellow named Ellis has been looking for her. His wife. Says she ran off a couple weeks ago. He has been asking around, offering a reward for information. What kind of man is this Ellis? Xander asked carefully. Tom shrugged. Gambler, from what I can tell. Spends most of his time at my tables, losing more than he wins. Why, you know something? Just curious, Xander said. I have not seen anyone. He left town quickly after that, his mind racing. So Margot's husband was looking for her, or rather, former husband, as she had called him. Xander wondered if they were actually divorced, or if she had just meant she considered the marriage over. Either way, he did not like the idea of this man searching for her. When he got back to the ranch, he found Margot in the garden, pulling weeds from between the rows of vegetables. She looked up at his approach and smiled, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. You are back earlier than I expected, she said, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. Xander dismounted and began unloading the supplies. Margot, I need to tell you something. Your husband is looking for you. He has been asking around town. The color drained from Margot's face. He is here, in Las Vegas? Yes. A man named Tom Morrison told me. He said your husband has been offering a reward for information about you. Margot's hand went to her throat and Xander saw fear in her eyes. I have to leave. I cannot let him find me here. I will not go back to him. You do not have to go anywhere, Xander said firmly. This is my land, and you are my guest. If he comes here, I will tell him I have not seen you. But if someone saw me with you in town, or if they see me here, we have not been to town together, and no one comes out this way. You are safe here, Margot. I promise. She looked at him with uncertainty. Why are you doing this? If he finds out you are hiding me, there could be trouble. Let me worry about that, Xander said. He stepped closer to her, wanting to offer comfort, but not sure if he should. I will not let him take you back if you do not want to go. I swear it. Margot's eyes filled with tears, and then she closed the distance between them, wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. Xander hesitated only a moment before returning the hug, one hand coming up to cradle the back of her head. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. I do not know what I would have done if you had not found me. You would have survived, Xander said, and you are stronger than you know. They stood like that for a long moment, and Xander felt something shift between them, some invisible line being crossed. When Margot finally pulled back, she looked up at him with an expression that made his heart skip. I should finish unpacking these supplies, he said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Over the next few days, Xander found himself hyper-vigilant, always watching the horizon for signs of riders approaching. He knew he was probably being paranoid, but he could not shake the feeling that trouble was coming. Margot noticed his tension, and he could see that it was making her anxious too. Maybe I should leave, she said one evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner. Not go back to him, but just go somewhere else. Maybe California, or north to Oregon. Somewhere he would not think to look for me. Is that what you want? Xander asked, trying to keep his voice neutral, even though the thought of her leaving made his chest ache. No, Margot said quietly. I want to stay here, with you, but I do not want to bring trouble to your door. You already collapsed at my door, Xander said, attempting humor. Anything else would be less dramatic. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. I am serious, Xander. What if he comes here? What if there is violence? I can handle myself, Xander said. I have dealt with difficult men before. But you should not have to deal with this. It is my problem, not yours. Xander turned to face her fully, his jaw set with determination. If you stay, it becomes my problem too, and I am willing to take that on. Why? Margot asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Xander took a breath, knowing this was the moment to be honest. Because I care about you, Margot. These past few weeks, getting to know you, spending time with you, it has meant something to me. You mean something to me. Margot's eyes widened, and he saw hope and fear warring in her expression. Xander, I care about you too. So much. But I am still married, technically. I never filed for divorce because I did not have the money for a lawyer, and I did not know how to do it on my own. I am not free. We can fix that, Xander said. We can find a lawyer, start the process. It might take time, but we can do it properly. And what if he fights it? What if he refuses to let me go? Then we will fight back. Together. Xander reached out and took her hand, feeling her fingers tremble in his. I know this is complicated, and I know the timing is probably terrible, but I cannot pretend I do not feel what I feel. I am falling in love with you, Margot. Maybe I have already fallen. Tears spilled down Margot's cheeks, but she was smiling. I am falling in love with you too. I think I started the moment I opened my eyes and saw you there, realizing you had stayed up all night taking care of me. No one has ever done something like that for me before. Xander cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb gently wiping away her tears. I would do it again. I would do anything for you. Can you kiss me? Margot whispered. Please? Xander leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she met him halfway. Their lips touched softly at first, a gentle exploration, and then with growing passion. Margot's hands came up to grip his shoulders, and Xander wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. It was a kiss full of promise and hope, and the recognition that they had both found something unexpected and precious. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Xander rested his forehead against hers. We will figure this out, he said. All of it. I believe you, Margot said. 2 days later, the trouble Xander had been anticipating arrived. He was working on repairing a section of fence when he saw 3 riders approaching from the direction of town. He recognized one of them immediately from Margot's description, a tall man with slicked back hair and fancy clothes that looked out of place in the desert. Xander quickly made his way back to the house, where Margot was inside preparing lunch. Stay inside, he told her quietly. Your husband is here with 2 other men. Do not come out no matter what you hear. Margot's face went pale, but she nodded, moving away from the window. Xander checked that his rifle was loaded and within easy reach by the door, then stepped out onto the porch to wait for the riders. They pulled up in front of the house, their horses kicking up dust. The man in fancy clothes looked down at Xander with an expression of arrogant entitlement that immediately put Xander's back up. Are you Quinlan? The man asked. I am. What can I do for you? I am looking for my wife. Margot Ellis. I have been told she might be out this way. Who told you that? Xander asked calmly. That is not your concern. Is she here or not? I have not seen anyone matching that description, Xander said, the lie coming easily. He was protecting Margot, and he felt no guilt about it. Ellis's eyes narrowed. You are lying. I can always tell when someone is lying. Then your instincts are off, Xander said. There is no one here but me. One of the other men, a rough-looking character with a scar across his cheek, spoke up. Mind if we take a look around? Just to be sure? Yes, I mind, Xander said, his voice hardening. This is private property, and you are not welcome here. I suggest you turn around and head back to town. Ellis dismounted, his face flushing with anger. I know she is here. Someone saw a woman at your place. My wife is mine, and I have a right to take her home. Your wife is not property, Xander said, his hand drifting closer to the door, where his rifle waited. And even if she was here, which she is not, I would not let you take her anywhere she did not want to go. So you admit you are hiding her, Ellis said triumphantly. I admit nothing. I am telling you to leave my property. Ellis took a step closer to the porch. I could have the law out here, make trouble for you. On what grounds? I already told you I have not seen your wife. Unless you have proof otherwise, the law cannot do anything. And something tells me you do not want to involve the law anyway, given what I hear about your debts around town. Ellis's face went from red to nearly purple. You have no idea who you are dealing with, and you have no idea who you are threatening, Xander said quietly. I am giving you one more chance to leave peacefully. Take it. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, tension crackling in the air. Then the man with the scar said, Come on, Ellis. He is not worth the trouble. She probably went somewhere else anyway. Ellis looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he turned and remounted his horse. If I find out you lied to me, I will be back, he threatened. You will not like how that turns out, Xander replied evenly. The three men rode away, and Xander stayed on the porch until they were completely out of sight. Only then did he go back inside, where he found Margot sitting on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. They are gone, he said gently, kneeling beside her. It is all right. He is going to keep looking, Margot said, her voice breaking. He is never going to let this go. Then we will deal with it. But Margot, we need to make this official. We need to get you a divorce. How? I do not have money for a lawyer. I do, Xander said. Not a lot, but enough. And if it is not enough, I will sell some cattle, do whatever I need to do. Margot looked at him with wonder. You would do that for me? I would do anything for you, Xander said, echoing his earlier words. I meant it when I said I love you. I love you too, Margot said, and then she was in his arms, holding on tight. The next week, Xander and Margot rode into Las Vegas together. He knew it was a risk, that Ellis might see them, but they needed to find a lawyer and start the divorce proceedings. Xander had done some asking around discreetly and learned that there was a lawyer named Samuel Hayes who had a reputation for taking on difficult cases. They found Hayes's office above the general store, a small room cluttered with papers and law books. Hayes himself was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a practical manner that immediately put Margot at ease. Tell me your situation, he said after they had introduced themselves. Margot explained everything, her marriage to Ellis, his gambling and cruelty, her decision to leave, and the fact that Ellis was now searching for her. Hayes listened carefully, occasionally making notes. Nevada has fairly progressive divorce laws compared to some states, he said when she had finished. You can file for divorce on the grounds of desertion or cruelty. Given what you have told me about your husband's behavior, I think we have a strong case. How long will it take? Xander asked. Several months, probably. Maybe as long as a year. The courts move slowly, and if your husband contests it, that will add time. There is also the matter of having him served with papers, which could be tricky if he is moving around. He is in Las Vegas, Margot said. I am sure of it. That helps. I can arrange for the papers to be served once we file. But Miss Ellis, I need to ask you something important. Are you afraid of your husband? Do you think he would try to hurt you? Margot hesitated, then shook her head. Not physically. He never hit me, but he could make my life very difficult in other ways. He might try to claim I owe him money, or that I stole from him. He is very good at twisting the truth. We will be prepared for that, Hayes said. Now let us talk about my fee. Xander paid the lawyer what he asked, most of the money he had saved over the past year, but he did not regret it. Seeing the relief and hope on Margot's face was worth every penny. As they left the office, Xander took Margot's hand. We should get back to the ranch before Well, I knew it. They turned to see Ellis standing on the street, flanked by the same two men from before. His face was twisted with rage. Thought you could sneak into town without me seeing, Ellis said, striding toward them. And you, he pointed at Xander. I knew you were lying. Stay back, Xander warned, stepping in front of Margot. She is my wife, Ellis snarled. You have no right to keep her from me. I am not your wife anymore, Margot said, her voice surprisingly steady as she stepped out from behind Xander. I am divorcing you. The papers will be served to you later today. Ellis's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. You cannot divorce me. Yes, I can, and I am. I will fight it. I will drag your name through the mud. I will tell everyone what kind of woman you are, leaving your husband to run off with some cowboy. Tell whoever you want, Margot said. I do not care anymore. You have no power over me, not anymore. Ellis lunged forward, but Xander was faster, his fist connecting with Ellis's jaw in a quick, efficient punch that sent the gambler sprawling in the dirt. The two men with Ellis moved forward, but Xander drew his revolver in one smooth motion, pointing it at them. I would not, he said calmly, unless you want trouble. The men froze, then backed up. Ellis was climbing to his feet, holding his jaw, his eyes full of hate. This is not over, he said. Yes, it is, Xander replied. You come near her again, you come near my property again, and I will have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. Do you understand me? Ellis glared at him, then at Margot. You will regret this, he said to her. Both of you will. The only thing I regret is wasting years of my life on you, Margot said quietly. Xander kept his gun trained on the three men as he and Margot backed toward where they had left their horse. Only when they were mounted and out of immediate danger did he holster the weapon. They rode hard back to the ranch, not speaking, both too full of adrenaline and emotion. It was not until they were safely inside Xander's house that Margot finally broke down, sobbing into his chest. I was so scared, she said between gasps. Not of him hitting me, but of him taking me back, of being trapped again. That will never happen, Xander said fiercely, holding her tight. I will never let that happen. You hit him, Margot said. And to Xander's surprise, there was a note of something almost like satisfaction in her voice. I did. I should not have, but I did. I am glad you did, Margot said. He deserved it. Over the following months, the divorce proceedings moved forward slowly but steadily. Ellis did contest it, just as Hayes had predicted, but his arguments were weak and became weaker when Hayes brought in people from Las Vegas who testified to Ellis's gambling habits and debts. Margot herself had to testify about her husband's treatment of her, which was difficult but necessary. Through it all, Xander was by her side, supporting her, encouraging her, loving her. Their relationship deepened and grew stronger with each passing day. Margot moved into the ranch house permanently, and though Xander insisted on sleeping in the other room out of respect for her until the divorce was final, they spent their days working side by side, building a life together. Margot proved to be a natural at ranch work. She learned to ride well enough to help Xander move the cattle, and she took over the management of the garden and chickens, expanding both until they were producing more than enough food for the two of them. She was smart and capable, and Xander found himself consulting her on all his decisions about the ranch. What do you think about adding some sheep? He asked her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. Sheep? I thought cattle ranchers hated sheep ranchers. Some do, but sheep can graze in areas where cattle cannot, and wool is a good secondary income. I have been thinking about it for a while. Then I think we should do it, Margot said. We should try it with a small flock first, see how it goes. Xander smiled. I like the sound of that. Well, you are stuck with me now, Margot said, leaning her head on his shoulder. At least for another few months until the divorce is final. And after that? Margot tilted her head up to look at him. After that, if you ask me properly, I might say yes to something else. Is that so? Xander asked, his heart suddenly pounding. That is so, Margot confirmed with a soft smile. In April of 1883, nearly 9 months after Margot had collapsed at his door, the divorce was finalized. Hayes brought the news to the ranch himself, making the trip out to deliver the papers personally. Congratulations, Miss Ellis, he said, handing the documents to Margot. You are a free woman. Margot looked at the papers, tears streaming down her face, and then she laughed, a sound of pure joy and relief. "Thank you," she said to Hayes. "Thank you so much." After the lawyer left, Xander and Margot celebrated quietly, just the two of them, sharing a bottle of wine Xander had been saving for a special occasion. As the sun set and the wine mellowed them both, Xander took Margot's hand and led her outside. "I have been waiting for this day," he said, his voice nervous in a way Margot had rarely heard from him. "Have you?" "Yes, because I could not ask you what I wanted to ask you while you were still married, even if it was only on paper." Xander took a breath and got down on one knee. "Margot Ellis, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You have changed my life in every way imaginable, all of them good. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Margot was crying again, but she was also smiling wider than Xander had ever seen. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes. I would love nothing more than to be your wife." They kissed under the desert stars, and for the first time since Margot had stumbled into his life, Xander felt like everything was exactly as it should be. They were married a month later in a small ceremony in Las Vegas, with Hayes and a few of Xander's friends from town as witnesses. Margot wore a simple white dress she had made herself, and Xander wore his best suit, the one he had bought years ago for his first engagement and never worn. It felt right to wear it now, for the woman who was meant to be his wife all along. The preacher who married them was an older man who had seen a lot of life, and he spoke about the importance of partnership and commitment, about standing together through hard times and good. Xander looked into Margot's eyes as he said his vows, and he meant every word with his whole heart. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to protect you for all the days of my life," he said. "I promise to build a life with you, to be your partner in everything. I promise to never take you for granted, to always remember how lucky I am that you found my door." Margot was crying as she said her own vows. "I promise to love you, to stand by your side, to work alongside you. I promise to be honest with you, to trust you, to build this life we are creating together. You saved me, Xander, in every way a person can be saved. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Xander kissed his bride, he felt a completeness he had never experienced before. This was what he had been waiting for all his life, even when he had not known he was waiting. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, and that night, for the first time, they truly became one. Xander was gentle with Margot, conscious that her experiences with her first husband had not been good, but she responded to him with a passion that took his breath away. They made love slowly, learning each other's bodies, and afterward Margot lay in his arms and told him it had never been like that before, that she had not known it could be like that. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Xander replied, holding her close. "Always." The next few years were the happiest of Xander's life. He and Margot worked the ranch together, and it prospered under their combined efforts. They did add sheep, and Margot proved to have a talent for managing them. She learned to shear them herself, and the wool they sold brought in good money. They also expanded the cattle herd and improved the house, adding on an extra bedroom and a proper kitchen. In the winter of 1884, Margot discovered she was pregnant. Xander was overjoyed, though also terrified, worried about all the things that could go wrong. But Margot was healthy and strong, and she carried the baby with relative ease. Their son was born in June of 1885, a hot day when the desert shimmered with heat. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Xander feared he would lose both Margot and the baby. But the midwife they had brought from town was experienced, and in the end, both mother and child came through safely. They named him Thomas, after Xander's father. He was a healthy baby with dark hair like his mother and blue eyes like his father, and from the moment Xander held him, he was completely in love. "Look at what we made," Margot said, exhausted but glowing as she watched Xander cradle their son. "Look at our beautiful boy. He is perfect," Xander said, his voice thick with emotion, just like his mother. Being parents brought new challenges, but also new joys. Xander loved coming in from work to find Margot nursing Thomas on the porch, or watching her sing to him as she rocked him to sleep. He loved the way Thomas's face would light up when he saw his father, the way his tiny hand would grip Xander's finger with surprising strength. 2 years later, in 1887, their daughter was born. They named her Sarah, and she was just as beautiful as her brother, with Margot's green eyes and a temperament that was already showing signs of being strong-willed and independent. She is going to be a handful, Xander predicted, as he watched his daughter kick her legs and wave her arms, already impatient with being held still. Good, Margot said. The world needs more women who know what they want and are not afraid to go after it. Xander laughed and kissed his wife. Just like her mother, then. As the children grew, the ranch continued to grow with them. Xander and Margot hired a couple of ranch hands to help with the increasing workload, which gave them more time to spend with Thomas and Sarah. They taught their children to ride almost as soon as they could walk, and both took to it naturally. Thomas was a quiet, thoughtful boy who loved animals and could often be found in the barn, talking to the horses or helping with the sheep. Sarah was louder and more adventurous, always getting into things and pushing boundaries, making Xander laugh even as he tried to discipline her. She reminds me of you, Margot told him one day, as they watched Sarah, now 3 years old, attempting to lasso one of the chickens. Me? She is all you. That determination, that fire. You have fire, Margot insisted. You just hide it better. But I saw it that day you faced down my former husband. I see it every day in how you built this life for us. In 1889, when Thomas was 4 and Sarah was 2, Margot became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder on her than the first two, and Xander worried constantly. But Margot assured him she was fine, that some pregnancies were just more difficult than others. Their second son, David, was born in the spring of 1890. He came early, smaller than his siblings had been, and for several terrifying days, they were not sure he would survive. But like his mother, David was a fighter, and slowly he grew stronger. By 1892, the ranch was firmly established as one of the most successful in the area. Xander and Margot had proved that a partnership based on love and mutual respect could build something lasting. People came from all over to buy their cattle and sheep, and Margot's wool was particularly prized for its quality. On an evening in July of that year, 8 years after Xander and Margot had married, they sat on the porch as they had so many times before. Thomas was 7 now, playing with David in the yard, while Sarah supervised at 5 years old, already bossy and protective of her brothers. "Do you ever think about that day?" Margot asked, leaning against Xander's shoulder. "The day I showed up here, more dead than alive?" "I think about it all the time," Xander admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if you had walked in a different direction, if you had found someone else's door." "I was meant to find yours," Margot said. "I believe that. I believe I was meant to end up here with you." "I believe that too," Xander said, wrapping his arm around her. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Margot. You and our children." "You saved my life," Margot said softly. "You stayed up all night watching over me, making sure I would be all right. And you have been saving me every day since, in 100 small ways." "You saved me too," Xander replied. "I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how lonely until I had you here, filling this house with life and love and laughter." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. This was everything Xander had ever wanted, even when he had not known to want it. A family, a home, a love that had been tested and proved strong enough to last. "I love you," Margot said, as she did every day. "I love you too," Xander replied, as he always did. More than words can say. By 1895, Thomas was 10, Sarah was 8, and David was 5. The children were thriving, healthy, and happy, and Xander often marveled at how lucky he was. He knew that not every couple was blessed with such a life, and he never took it for granted. Margot had become a pillar of the small community that had grown up around Las Vegas. She organized gatherings for the ranch families, helped new mothers with their babies, and even taught some of the local women to read and write. She had found her purpose, her place in the world, and it showed in everything she did. Xander himself had become respected as a fair employer and a skilled rancher. Men came to him for advice, and he was always willing to share what he had learned. The young cowboy who had once been alone now had a family, friends, a community. One day in the fall of that year, a stranger came to the ranch. He was an older man, well dressed, and he introduced himself as a representative of a larger ranching operation that was interested in buying Xander out. "We would pay you handsomely," the man said, "enough for you and your family to live comfortably for the rest of your lives without having to work another day." Xander glanced at Margot, who was standing beside him. She gave him a small smile and a nod, indicating he should handle this however he saw fit. "I appreciate the offer," Xander said, "but this ranch is not for sale. My wife and I built this place together, and we plan to pass it on to our children someday." "You should think carefully," the man pressed. "This is a very generous offer." "I do not need to think about it," Xander said firmly. "This is our home. It is not about money." After the man left, Margot hugged Xander tight. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not even considering it. For understanding that this place is more than just property or income. It is our life." "It is our life," Xander agreed, "and I would not trade it for anything." As the years continued to pass, the Quinn family, as they were known in the area, became legendary for their love story. People told the tale of how Margot had collapsed at Xander's door and how he had stayed awake all night watching over her, how that had been the beginning of a great love. Young couples looked to them as an example of what marriage could be when it was based on genuine partnership and affection. In 1898, Thomas turned 13, already tall and strong like his father. He had announced that he wanted to be a rancher like Xander, that he wanted to learn everything he could about running the place. Xander had never been prouder, knowing that his son wanted to carry on what he and Margot had built. Sarah, at 11, was already showing signs of being a beauty like her mother, but more importantly, she had Margot's sharp mind and determination. She had learned to read from her mother and was now devouring every book they could get their hands on. She talked about maybe becoming a teacher someday, and both Xander and Margot encouraged her dreams. David, at 8, was the quietest of the three children, but he had a gift with animals that surpassed even Thomas's. He could calm a spooked horse with just a touch, and the ranch dogs followed him everywhere. Xander had a feeling that David would find his own unique path, different from his siblings, but no less valuable. One night in the summer of 1900, 18 years after Margot had first collapsed at his door, Xander lay in bed beside his wife, listening to her breathe in the darkness. They were both in their 40s now, still healthy and strong, but Xander was acutely aware of how precious time was, how quickly it could slip away. "Are you awake?" he asked softly. "Yes," Margot replied, turning toward him. "What are you thinking about?" "About how grateful I am," Xander said. "For you, for our children, for this life we have built. Sometimes I cannot believe it is real." Margot reached out and touched his face. "It is real. We made it real together." "I know. But there was a time when I thought I would spend my whole life alone, when I had given up on finding someone to share my life with. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I had said. I was lost in more ways than one when I found you," Margot said. "Lost in the desert, lost in my life, lost in myself. But you found me, Xander. You stayed awake all night watching over me when you had no reason to care whether I lived or died. You gave me water and soup and shelter. And then you gave me so much more than that. You gave me love and home and purpose. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything. Xander corrected gently. That is what love is. Not one person saving another, but two people building something together that neither could build alone. When did you become so wise? Margot asked with a smile he could hear even in the darkness. When I married you, Xander replied, you make me better than I would be without you. They made love then, tender and familiar after so many years, and afterward Margot fell asleep in his arms the way she did every night. Xander stayed awake a while longer, thinking about that night so long ago when he had sat in a chair beside his bed, watching over a stranger who had collapsed at his door, making sure she kept breathing. He had not known then that he was watching over his future, over the person who would become the center of his entire world. By 1902, the ranch was more prosperous than ever. Thomas, now 17, was taking on more and more responsibility, and Xander was teaching him everything he knew. Sarah, at 15, had indeed begun teaching some of the younger children in the area, setting up a small school in one of the unused buildings on the ranch. David, at 12, was helping manage the animals with a skill that amazed everyone. Xander and Margot found themselves with more time to simply enjoy each other's company. They would ride out together in the mornings, just the two of them, watching the sun come up over the desert landscape that had been the backdrop to their love story. Do you ever miss Philadelphia? Xander asked one such morning as they sat on their horses, looking out over their land. No, Margot said without hesitation. That was someone else's life. This is mine. You are mine. I am yours, Xander agreed. Always have been, from the moment I opened that door and saw you lying there. You know what I think about sometimes, Margot said. I think about what would have happened if I had not left him. If I had stayed in that marriage, slowly dying inside, I would never have had you, never had our children, never had this life. As terrible as those days in the desert were, as close as I came to dying, I would go through them all again if it meant ending up here. You are stronger than anyone I have ever known, Xander said. To walk away from everything you knew, even when it meant risking your life, that takes courage. Or desperation, Margot said wryly. Courage and desperation sometimes look the same, Xander replied. Either way, I am grateful you had it. In 1905, 23 years after that fateful day, Xander and Margot threw a big party to celebrate the anniversary of the day they had met. They invited everyone from the surrounding area, and people came from miles around to join in the celebration. Thomas, now 20, and courting a young woman from town, gave a speech about his parents, talking about how they had shown him what real love looked like. Sarah, 18 and planning to open a proper school in Las Vegas, sang a song she had written about second chances and new beginnings. David, 15 and already taller than his father, simply hugged them both and told them he loved them. As Xander danced with Margot under strings of lanterns they had hung in the yard, he looked around at all the people who had come to celebrate with them, at their children and the life they had built, and felt a profound sense of contentment. This is everything, he said to Margot as they swayed together. This moment, right here. This is everything I ever wanted. Me too, Margot said, her head on his chest. Though I did not know it until I found you. Until I found you, Xander corrected. On my porch, unconscious and sunburned. Margot laughed. Not my finest moment. It was the beginning of my finest life, Xander said seriously. Every good thing I have came from that day. As the party continued around them, as their friends and family celebrated, Xander held his wife close and thought about the mystery of how life worked, how random events could change everything, how a woman walking in the wrong direction could end up at exactly the right door, how staying awake one night to watch over a stranger could lead to a lifetime of love. In 1908, Thomas married his sweetheart, a kind woman named Elizabeth who reminded Xander a little of Margot in her determination and warmth. They held the wedding at the ranch, and it was a joyous occasion. A year later, Thomas and Elizabeth had a baby boy, making Xander and Margot grandparents for the first time. Can you believe it? Margot said, holding her grandson for the first time, tears streaming down her face. "We are grandparents." "I can believe it," Xander said, looking at his wife holding their grandchild, at Thomas beaming with pride, at their family continuing to grow. "I can believe anything is possible." Sarah got married in 1910 to a school teacher from California who had come to Nevada looking for work. They planned to stay in the area, which delighted both Xander and Margot. David, at 20, had become the foremost animal handler in the region, and people brought their difficult horses and cattle to him from all over. By 1912, 30 years after Margot had collapsed at his door, Xander and Margot had 4 grandchildren and another on the way. The ranch was still thriving, now being run primarily by Thomas with David's help, while Xander and Margot took on more of an advisory role. They spent their days much as they had in the beginning, working together, talking, simply being together. They still slept in the same bed every night, still told each other, "I love you," every day, still looked at each other with the wonder of people who knew how lucky they were. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Margot said, "I want you to know something." "What is that?" Xander asked, taking her hand. "If I could go back and live my life again, I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts, not even the painful parts, because they all led me here, to you, to this life. And this life has been more than I ever dreamed possible." Xander felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I feel the same way. Every moment with you has been a gift, even the ordinary moments, maybe especially those. Just sitting here with you, holding your hand, watching the sun go down. That is happiness." "That is love," Margot said softly. "Real love. Not the dramatic kind in books, but the everyday kind that sustains you through everything. The kind that makes you want to stay awake all night just to make sure the other person keeps breathing." Xander smiled, remembering that first night. "I would do it again, you know. Stay awake watching over you. I still do it sometimes, even now. I wake up in the middle of the night and I look at you. Make sure you are breathing. Make sure you are real." "I am real," Margot assured him, "and I am not going anywhere." As the years continued to pass, Xander and Margot aged gracefully together. Their hair turned gray, their faces lined with the marks of years spent working under the sun, but their love never diminished. If anything, it grew deeper, richer, more precious with each passing year. They celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary in 1913, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, and Xander gave a speech that had everyone crying. "31 years ago," he said, "a woman I had never met collapsed at my door. She was dying, though neither of us knew it then. I stayed up all night watching over her, making sure she kept breathing, and when she woke up, I gave her soup. That is how this story started, with soup and vigilance and a stranger in need. But it became so much more than that. It became a marriage, a family, a life. It became everything to me. Margot, you are everything to me. You always have been from that very first night. I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you, for whatever years we have left." Margot was crying as she stood and kissed him. "You are my everything too," she said. "My hero, my partner, my best friend, my love. Thank you for staying awake that night. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for every day since." By 1918, as the world outside their small corner of Nevada changed and evolved, Xander and Margot's love remained constant. They were in their 60s now, no longer young, but still vital, still engaged with life and with each other. They had 8 grandchildren now, with more on the way, and the ranch had expanded to include not just cattle and sheep, but also horses that David bred and trained. The family business was thriving, a testament to what Xander and Margot had built together. On a warm evening in September of that year, 36 years after Margot had collapsed at his door, Xander and Margot sat on their porch, as they had done countless times before. They were quiet, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of companionship. "Do you think we will always have this?" Margot asked suddenly. This peace, this happiness? I think we will have it for as long as we both live, Xander said. And I think what we have built will outlast us. Our children have strong marriages because they saw ours. Our grandchildren are being raised with love because they see how we love each other. That legacy will continue even after we are gone. I am not ready to think about being gone, Margot said. I want more years with you, many more. Then we will have them, Xander said. We will have as many as we are given, and we will make the most of every single one. And they did. Xander and Margot lived well into their 70s, still holding hands, still in love, still grateful every day for the chance encounter that had brought them together. They watched their grandchildren grow up and start families of their own. They saw the ranch continue to prosper under Thomas's management, and they spent their final years exactly as they had spent all the others together. When people asked them the secret to their long and happy marriage, they always had the same answer. We choose each other, Margot would say. Every single day we choose each other. And we remember how we started, Xander would add. We remember that we almost did not have this, that it could so easily have gone differently. So we never take it for granted. Not for a single day. In the spring of 1923, on a perfect morning with a gentle breeze blowing across the desert, Xander and Margot sat on their porch, now in their late 60s, watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard. Thomas's oldest daughter had just had twins, and the babies were being passed around between doting family members. Can you believe it? Margot said, leaning against Xander's shoulder. Great-grandparents, how did that happen? One day at a time, Xander said, wrapping his arm around her. One day of loving you at a time. I am glad I collapsed at your door, Margot said suddenly. Xander looked at her in surprise. You are? Yes, I wish it had not taken such a desperate situation to get me there, but I am glad that of all the places I could have ended up, of all the doors I could have found, it was yours. Because you did not just give me soup and a place to rest. You gave me everything. You gave me myself back. And then you gave me a life more wonderful than I could have imagined. I am glad you collapsed at my door too, Xander said, kissing the top of her head. Though I wish you had not suffered so much to get there. But yes, I am grateful for that day, for every day since. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Margot Quinn. You will always be the best thing. They sat together as the sun climbed higher in the sky, as their family laughed and played around them, as the ranch they had built together hummed with life. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting and beautiful from the most unlikely beginning. And as Xander held his wife, feeling her heart beat steady against his side, he thought about that long ago night when he had sat in a chair watching over a stranger, making sure she kept breathing. He had not known then that he was watching over his entire future, over the person who would make every moment of his life meaningful, but he knew it now. He had known it for 41 years, since the morning she had opened those green eyes and looked at him with confusion and hope. He had known it through every day and night since, through every joy and challenge, through raising children and building a legacy. He had known it, and he would know it until his last breath, that the woman who collapsed at his door, the woman he had stayed awake all night watching, the woman he had given soup to when she woke, was the love of his life, and that was the greatest gift of all. The sun continued its arc across the Nevada sky, painting everything in gold and shadow, and Xander Quinn held his wife close, grateful beyond measure for the life they had created together, for the love that had started with soup and vigilance and had grown into something that would echo through generations. This was their happy ending, though it was not an ending at all. It was a continuation, a legacy, a love story that would be told by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren long after they were gone. And it all began on a hot July day in 1882 when a woman collapsed at a cowboy's door, and he stayed awake all night watching to make sure she lived. Because sometimes the greatest love stories start with the simplest acts of kindness, and sometimes one night of vigilance can lead to a lifetime of love.